This is the second in a series of 4 classes that are part of my Foundations of Positive Psychology course here at the University of Northern Iowa. And we have 2 more sessions coming up on October 12th, session on mindfulness, particularly on mindfulness meditation, and on November 2nd on positive education. But tonight, though, we're going to talk about flow. And we have 2 big things going on. I think all of you are well aware of this. One is we have a terrific panel of 3 guests, and each of them is going to talk about their experience of flow in a domain that is important to them. Josie Lewis, a very accomplished painter, is going to talk about flow in painting. Rod Kasheff is going to talk about flow in rock climbing, and John Bakehouse is going to talk about his experiences with flow in farming. And we'll have plenty of time for questions from anyone, from all of you. We want you to engage, ask questions of themselves. They'll talk amongst themselves. If you're on Facebook participating in the live stream, just go ahead and submit your questions in the chat, and we will field those and share those questions as well. This is being recorded, so we'll post it on our YouTube channel and on Facebook, and you can watch it later if you like, and certainly share it with your friends. The other big thing we have going on here tonight is that we are celebrating the birthday of the father of flow. As he's widely known, my longtime mentor, friend, and collaborator, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Mike is turning 86 tomorrow. Mike, I didn't ask if it's okay if I give that number. They can find out easily enough on their own, so I suppose it doesn't matter. But big birthday for him tomorrow. And he's joining us with Isabella and their granddaughter, Sophia, and daughter-in-law, Annie, out in Claremont, California. So we'll hold all the revelry until a little bit later, hold off on that. But please, if you're speaking, give Mike your best wishes when you do speak, and we'll have a little party here before we're finished tonight. Just in case anyone out there is not aware of what flow is or doesn't know much about flow, in particular, maybe those who are joining us later than tonight, watching the capture later, I'm just going to give a very short primer on flow. At the great risk of being simplistic, and I'm sure I will be because I'm taking well over 50 years of work and many, many, many more years of thought and compressing this into probably no more than a minute. But I want to provide that just as a little background before we get started. So I'm going to share my screen here. And you can see that I'm sharing a screen am I sharing my screen? Yes, okay. So this is a piece of art that was done by a student of ours, Shavi is his name, capturing what is really at the essence of flow, this balance of challenge and skill when someone is engaged in an activity that he or she loves for its own sake at a high level of challenge, asking a lot of yourself to be successful at it, where of course we know a lot of things, great things happen. Time is distorted, self-consciousness disappears, the ego falls away, a number of other characteristics that we'll talk about in a few minutes here. And the dimensions of flow, just very quickly, I know everyone in the class is very familiar with this, and most of the others with us today are as well. But 3 of the conditions necessary for flow: the individual's perceived balance of challenge and skill, that the challenge required of him or her is doable, is at your level of skill, or oftentimes a little bit better yet, a little bit above your level of skill. Very clear goals, immediate proximal goals for being successful. Immediate and unambiguous feedback, usually that you get from the activity itself because you know it well enough that you're getting immediate feedback. You know when you've done well and you know when you need to do better. Intense concentration because of all of your attention is being focused. All of your resources are being focused on this particular act. A heightened sense of control, distortion of time, which I mentioned briefly earlier. This loss of self-consciousness, merging of action and awareness. You feel as if you're becoming one with, and your awareness is becoming one with the activity. And then the experience is autotelic, that you want to do it for its own sake, as an end in and of itself. And our speakers are going to be addressing those, I'm sure, as we hear from them. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and Josie is going to go first. And Josie is going to introduce herself and talk a bit about flow and painting. And all of you should feel free to ask your questions after the speakers are finished. We'll have a lot of time for conversation. So It's all yours, Josie.
Hello, hi. I am so excited to be here. It's such an honor. Thanks so much, Gary, for inviting me. And it truly is an honor to meet Mihaly in the Zoom. I have here my very dog-eared copy of Flow, which is an excellent book. Everybody should read it. And I have it on my morning coffee table, and I will read up at random, pick it up and read a page or two virtually every morning. It's like my morning devotion. So that's what you've done, Mihai. And it's such an honor. So thank you so much for the work that you brought to the world, and happy birthday. We're so glad you were here and are here. So I am an artist. And I've been an artist my whole life. Like, from a little kid, I, would make stuff. My dad's a painter, so it was just kind of in the air. And I, went to college for art, for painting mainly was my thing. And then I went to grad school. And I, without knowing it, I was in flow a lot because, of course, I was, as an artist, I would, do these very detailed kind of works, and I would love it. It was such a great experience. And then what really was, a major event for me to really kind of like learn about what flow actually is was about 6 years ago. I went through a personal tragedy where I lost my full-term baby, and then I had numerous miscarriages. So I also congruently, I had a toddler who was, extraordinary and amazing, but also she was,
a toddler,
and had a lot of opinions about everything. And then I was also like not feeling very certain about my art career. And I wasn't really feeling like I'd found my audience, and I just didn't know what to do. So I kind of decided to quit being an artist, not being creative, but I was like, the art career part, I thought, this isn't for me. I'm just, I can't do it. And then at the same time, I started making these watercolor paintings, which in the tradition that I came up in, watercolor was kind of considered like not a serious medium, so it was kind of like I would make these watercolor paintings, and it was, I'd make them in, an hour during my daughter's nap time, and I would be transported into another dimension. It was like, it was very similar. It felt so similar to like having a glass of wine, or even like some sort of drug, because I would just drop into the color. And I was painting. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to show you what the kind of stuff that I was making. Okay, is this working or not? It's working? Yes? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Yes. Okay. So I was just painting patterns and colors and textures, and it was very, very simple stuff, and it was repetitive and meditative. And like I said, I would just kind of drop into this alternative reality. And then, somewhere in there, I must have ran across Mihaly's TED Talk, or somebody clued me into it, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening to me. I'm just falling into this flow state. But what was really significant for me is that the flow state was an antidote to grief, and it helped me to get through this incredibly difficult time of my life in a really extraordinary way. And then as I was experiencing flow in these patterns, I also decided to make videos of what I was doing, just kind of for fun. I was like, well, what would happen if I filmed this? And so I, at the time, this is a few years ago, I had a couple hundred Instagram followers, and I started to film these paintings. I'm going to show you a little clip of one here. Oh dear. I started to film the paintings, and I posted one of these videos on Instagram, thinking, it would get 200 views, and it got 20,000 views. And so then I thought that must be a fluke. So I did another one and the same thing happened. It got another 20,000 views. So then from then I started to make these videos every day and post them to the internet. And now, you know, now it's like my thing. Like now they've had billions of views, and I have, you know, millions of followers on social media. And really, you know, I'm going to wind things up here, but really what I think happens, and I hear this from a lot of people, is that they experience like mini flow from my videos. These are quite fast. Usually they're more like a minute each. And I think people like kind of zone out, and they have like a empathetic flow state from my flow that I'm recording in video. And it's just been such an interesting experience to share my flow with other people, and then it gives them a positive experience. So, all right.
That's great. Mike, did you want to say anything in response? We have to, Isabella, could you unmute? Or Annie? We'd have to unmute the microphone there.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a great story, and I believe it, and I think that is the way art becomes such an important part in human history and human culture and human lives. And I just hope that you can keep it up, and it should be something that you can in fact do all your life, and you can go back to it and do little changes if you want to, you know, and try new things. But basically, I think this is a very nice, very important discovery you made, and I hope you can keep doing it, not only for your sake, but more for the sake of those who will see it and use it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Josie, and for those who aren't among your millions of followers, where can they find you on Facebook?
So I'm Josie
Instagram?
Art everywhere. So
Okay.
It's easy. I'm Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest, all the big ones.
Great. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Rod?
Hey everyone, that was really cool, Josie. Hi Mike,
Hi.
happy birthday. It's
Thank
great to
you.
be here with you. Yeah, thanks for having me on the panel, Gary. I really appreciate it. My name is Rod Kasheff. I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I live in Iowa City right now. I went to school here at the University of Iowa, and I went and tried out rock climbing for the first time at the rec center here.
Ah,
And it totally engulfed my life, for better or for worse. My mom, who's with us, would probably say for worse. I dropped out of school for a year, went to Colorado to not let school get in the way of my education. And then I came back and finished school. And I guess right now my kind of life works revolves around growing the outdoor rock climbing community in Iowa. There's a lot of potential here. And I think after seeing how much rock there really is, I felt a little bit deceived about the Iowa landscape. And so I'm kind of in the process of redefining what Iowa is. I'm going to share some pictures with you all about the type of climbing that I do. I'm not a mountaineer or an alpinist. I climb rock faces. So can you all see this right now?
Yeah.
This is in Iowa. This is there's a limestone here, 430 million years old. Beautiful, beautiful stone. And right here, this is a perfect example of being in the flow experience. It looks like I'm staring straight at the camera, but I didn't even know there was a camera there. I didn't even realize anyone was taking pictures of me right above there. This is in Nevada. This is a type of climbing called bouldering. There's no ropes, but down below you see there's foam padding that you fall on, whereas the first picture there's a rope behind me here. This is in Mexico. This wall is about maybe 1,300 feet tall, and it took the entire day. Again, didn't know pictures were being taken of me, so it's fun seeing myself in a flow state that you don't you're not thinking about in the moment, of course. This is also in Iowa, Wisconsin. This is a desert tower in Utah. And this is a short video of one of the pictures of me bouldering. This is kind of me in a flow state where skill level and challenge met to make a moment that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. This boulder specifically is a little bit taller than the majority I've ever done. Maybe about 30 feet tall at its peak. So sorry, Mom. It is a little bit more of a risk, but I guess it was worth it. And yeah, I guess these are the moments I live for. So from this point on in the video, from a few moves prior, it's all new terrain for me. Actually, I've never done these moves. I didn't know what to expect. But again, the first few moves kind of put me in a sort of rhythm that I carried forward, and it gave me the confidence to do the rest of the climb, and do moves that I wasn't sure I was going to encounter, just based off prior experience on other routes that I've done. So that's me. I'm Rod. Thanks, Mike.
Nice.
Thanks. Gary, I think your mic's off.
Yeah. The picture of you climbing in Wisconsin, where was that?
That is in Governor Dodge State Park.
Okay. Okay. Because Mike, you've done quite a lot of climbing in Wisconsin, right? It was at Devil's Lake.
Devil's Lake, we did a lot of climbing there. It's so close to Chicago, you could go there for the weekend. You don't have to cross this all the way to California or Colorado. So I did a lot there. I did a lot of climbing in the Dolomites in Italy, and around Devil's Lake, and yeah, those are the two places I did most of my climbing: Italy and Devil's Lake, Dolomites and Devil's Lake.
And you have a first climb in, is it in the Tetons?
No, I did a lot of it first in Italy.
Okay.
No, you did the first climb on a section that had not been climbed before.
Yeah, maybe you didn't hear me. A first climb, yeah. Was that in the Tetons?
Oh yeah, yeah. I did a couple of one or two here and there, and one in the Tetons. Yeah, and yeah, I don't recall now. It's been so long since I climbed. I mean, about 7, 8 years, at least 10
What, since when?
that I climbed.
No, it's more like 70 years.
How many?
70 years.
70?
70, yeah.
No, not 70. No, I feel like. But anyway.
Anyway, but
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rod. Let's see, John? And I've got some of John's slides here that I'm going to run, so let me know when you are ready, John.
I am ready if you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah.
First of all, good evening, everybody. Mike, happy birthday. It happens that a very good friend of mine also has a birthday today, so a year from now, I will probably remember that it's your birthday. So happy birthday. And Gary, thanks for having me on this panel. It's quite an honor. I'm a relatively newcomer to putting a name to flow. Mike, his book is on its way. My wife and I are looking forward to reading it. This slide that's up here shows our location in the world, really. I didn't know who all was going to be tuning in tonight, so I thought, in a nutshell, this is where our farm is located in Southwest Iowa. It is a family farm. It's been in our family since the late 1880s. My great-great-grandparents farmsteaded this area and also built a house here that I still live in with my wife and my 10-year-old son. I am the 5th generation and my son is the 6th generation. So I mention that because every day I feel a very deep connection and am very thankful not only to my family, past and present, but also to the land that has sustained our family for so many generations. I did attend Drake University for 4 years to get a magazine journalism degree, and then worked for a carpenter for a year after that. But other than those 5 years, I have spent my entire life on this farm. And of course, I have always farmed in some capacity. But after I came back from Des Moines in 1996, I believe is when I started kind of farming full time. And it is all I have ever done. It is all I've ever known. And I love every last part of it, which is kind of most every part of it, I should say. That's kind of a rare thing as I'm getting to know other people's career paths. Farming is not only a way of life, but it's a business. So I've been very fortunate to be able to combine those two. My commute is about 30 seconds long. I walk out our door and I'm at work. I kind of feel like that environment is very conducive to flow moments. And there are so many instances of flow in farming that it's hard to pick just one. So I decided to kind of focus on harvests, which is what we're doing now. It's kind of the end of a long growing season. We've put the seed in the ground. We've made the best decision we can about what kind of seed to put in. We've put the fertilizer on. We've tried to manage weeds and pests as best as we can. We are currently in an extreme drought or a severe drought, so it's been very, very dry. Things look remarkably good for as dry as it's been. But right now we have a singular focus of getting that crop from the field to the grain bins. And you can see some grain bins behind that combine there. And I also didn't know if people were familiar with what a combine is. So the main tool in harvest, of course, is a combine. And that's our combine right in front, that's color. And I couldn't find a schematic of our specific combine, so I just filched one off the internet that's on the left-hand side. And the point of that picture is to show that there are 100 moving parts in a combine that have to work together to harvest the grain crop. I did a quick calculation today as we are driving through the cornfield about 5 miles an hour. That combine is processing corn from a standing plant, dead plant, to a handful of clean grain is processing about 23 pounds of corn every second. So a lot of things have to go right with that combine. And we spend a lot of time maintaining that combine over the winter. We do a lot of repairs. I get very familiar with the combine, very intimate with how it works. And so when we're spending hours and hours in that cab and going over acre after acre, you tend to, when you're sitting in that cab, you really start to tune out everything else that's happening. I rarely listen to the radio because I want to be able to feel how the combine is acting. Sometimes you'll feel a little hiccup here and there that will be a sign of a problem. I want to be able to hear, especially what's going on. Sometimes you'll hear a bearing start to go bad before it actually goes bad. You get an idea of how much you're lugging the machine, how much you're stressing the machine based on how it sounds. Smells, of course, are very important. A hot belt that smells like burning rubber, that's important to take care of quickly, especially in drought, you're going to have a fire. So as I am in that combine driving, I have all of this feedback coming at me. It's not just sights and sounds. There are instruments also that tell me if we're getting grain loss over the rotor, grain loss over the chaffer, that type of thing. And we can make adjustments on the fly as we go. So it becomes a very singular event of me trying to get that corn processed and out of the combine and into the wagon as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I've been doing it. We've had this particular combine for about 15 years. So I've come to know that combine pretty darn well. So that's kind of an example of time basically ceasing to exist. It seems kind of strange to say I become one with the machine, but really, you know, it's a partnership. We're working together to bring that grain and that yield in as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And yeah, it's a challenge every year because the conditions typically are different every year. Sometimes the yield is higher, so you can't drive as fast. Sometimes the corn is wetter, so you have to set your settings a little differently to collect the grain more efficiently. So that's just kind of one example of how I experience flow on our farm. And my dad also, I farm with my dad. And when we are farming together, it's really kind of cool when we can anticipate each other's moves, you know, and not have to be constantly in contact to tell one or the other, well, do this, now do that. So it's been quite an experience for me to not only, again, be part of this land that has sustained this family for so long, but also to be really part of a family, both past and present, to experience those flow moments. And as I walk around the farm, I have my trusty iPhone, of course, and these are just pictures that I have taken really as they present themselves.
You're going to talk about the cows a little bit later, right?
Yeah, yep,
So
yep. I can talk about that later. I can touch on that later. Yep, for sure.
Okay, this will be our bovine teaser. More on that later, I guess. Okay.
And I should mention, we are mostly corn and beans. We grow mostly corn and beans, but we also, as you can see, have some cows and a few goats. And really, even though corn and beans are kind of our bread and butter, kind of where my passion lies is in the grazing and in the livestock.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you. Mike, do you want to, could you unmute? You guys, okay. There we go. You know what, when we think about flow, you know, there's been a lot of research, a lot of testimonials, a lot of interviews on painting and certainly on rock climbing. But when most people think about flow, they don't think about farming. But Mike, you've done some research early on, I believe, on the experience of flow among farmers, haven't you?
No, not personally, but I mean people who work.
Right.
But some of my students did, and mostly farmers in the Italian Alps, and then some in Spain and France, but some in Canada. But I didn't personally do much.
Okay.
Oh, I have to go for a moment. Can you converse? I will be back in a moment.
Nope. Okay, that's all right. We're fine. So I think while Mike is stepping away,
Gary,
yeah, it's up.
I thought I could show you this picture of Mike.
Yeah, what is that?
Mike rock climbing. Devil's Lake.
Oh, there he is. Okay, can you hold that up more to the closer to the camera? Okay, the pursuit of happiness. Okay, yeah, there he is. Boy, about what year was that? Do you know?
Uh,
The picture was taken.
let's see. Probably he came here in the early 60s.
Okay, and where was that?
Devil's Lake, Wisconsin.
I'm sorry.
Devil's Lake, Wisconsin.
Devil's Lake. Okay, in Wisconsin. Okay, near the Dells. Okay. No, that's great. Thank you.
Picture of Mike when he was younger.
Oh, going with the flow. Okay. I wanted to point out here quickly, and then Mike will be back and we'll resume the conversation with him. But for those who aren't aware, Deanne and Mike and I have started a website several months ago, about a year ago, called the Flow Channel, which is, of course, everything is entirely free. It's an educational site to help people better understand what flow is and how to apply principles of flow in education, in business, in all dimensions of life. So we also have a Facebook page, of course, where some people are joining us right now for the live stream. If you want to go to the website, you can subscribe and you will get updates on blog posts and podcasts. So check that out when you have a chance, if you haven't already. So we're waiting for Mike to come back. How about questions for our three guests?
I have a question.
Sure.
It's mainly for Rod, but maybe this applies to John too. I'm really curious about the relationship of risk and adrenaline to flow. Like I don't experience a lot of adrenaline when I'm painting, but I know I've seen a lot of people, especially in like the adventure sports types with climbing and different things like that, where adrenaline is such a big part of it. So I'd love to hear from Rod about that.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking that. I think that's sometimes misunderstood aspect of climbing. When I experience adrenaline when I'm climbing, that usually means something has gone really wrong. I don't seek adrenaline. I don't really care to say go skydiving or anything like that. That's not why. I think some people might get into climbing for that reason. But for me, I understand the risks very well. And so when I take falls, there really isn't adrenaline. I think for a beginner climber, when they fall for the first time and it's their first time experiencing that, likely there will be some sort of adrenaline rush. At my point in climbing, I've taken, probably tens of thousands of falls to the point where it's just part of the experience. So when I choose climbs, I don't choose them based off of that. I choose them more so for aesthetics and movement. So does that kind of answer the adrenaline question? Sometimes I definitely do experience it, and when I do, it's either because I have taken maybe a fall that I haven't experienced before, or I have completed a route, and once I come to that realization that I have completed it successfully, I think I do get maybe a little spike of adrenaline or endorphins. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I'd say the last big adrenaline rush I felt was on Devil's Tower. I unexpectedly slipped and took a 50-foot fall. But it was fine. It was just a big fall.
For those who don't know, Rod's mother is on this call as well.
Yeah, she hasn't heard any of
Farrah,
it
Farrah,
yet.
did you hear that? She knew about it. There she
Yes,
is.
I'm not sure like if this was a good idea to be in this Zoom meeting anymore. I'm kidding. I'm learning.
Thanks,
You-
Mom.
And there's a
Josie, Josie, I think part of your question, though, you used the term risk. Did you have an interest in Rod addressing risk in addition to adrenaline? Or Rod, did you want to say more about that?
Could I throw something in there too?
Sure.
Okay,
Anybody.
yeah, because I also realized this, that the risk part wasn't necessarily addressed, but risk can definitely be a component of challenge or arousal. And as your skill increases, you are probably going to seek out riskier things to get that right balance of challenge. So that doesn't necessarily mean that your adrenaline response or anything like that will change, but definitely as people improve their skills in something, they do have to increase the level of risk. Is this correct?
That's a great question. I think you can. I think you can increase the level of risk. But in climbing, you can increase level of difficulty without increasing level of risk. So what I mean by that is like a beginner climber would probably start off by climbing on holds that they can put their entire hand on. So their fingers might look something like this inside the hold. And that climb, let's say, is a 10-foot tall boulder. Someone who has advanced more in climbing can find another 10-foot tall boulder, but the handholds are the size of a single finger pad going across your hand. So as I have gotten better at climbing, what changes isn't necessarily the danger or risk levels, but rather the movement difficulties. Climbing is a physics problem, like a real, tangible physics problem. And as long as you are physically capable of doing it, the challenge is to figure out that physics problem. So in that way, there are easier physics problems and much more difficult physics problems. That video that I showed of me climbing that one that was taller, yes, there was more risk involved in that. If I took a fall from the very top, it could have been bad. The most important thing in climbing is that you understand those risks, and you accept them and then move forward with it. So at that point, I didn't choose this climb because it was riskier. I chose it because I thought it was a really striking line, and it just happened to be tall. So if it was a striking line and it was shorter, that would have been great. So in some sense, it wasn't my choice that it was a riskier climb, but I just accepted that it was a higher risk climb. But I guess something I should add to this all is that as a climber, I don't speak for all climbers. There are so many different styles and motives for it. So that's just my take on it.
Hey, could I say something?
I was hoping, Susan, I was hoping you would.
Thank
For
you, Gary.
those who don't know Susan Jackson is the co-author of the book Flow in Sports, and I was hoping she'd have something to offer on this, and an important contributor to measures for helping us do research in flow. So please go ahead, Susan. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Gary, for putting this on, and I'm so pleased to be able to be part of this, and hopefully to see Mike again, and wish him personally a happy birthday when he returns to the screen. And I loved your description and explanation there, Rod, and I know that you're speaking for your experience. I just like to echo that in the research that I've been involved in, and also beyond flow research, other research that looks at motivation of adventure sport and adventure recreation participants, of which rock climbing would fall into that niche area. It's kind of a myth that they're adrenaline junkies, that these people, that what they do is that they're seeking an adrenaline high. Sometimes that happens, but certainly what I found, being most interested in flow and looking at flow and trying to understand the role of flow for this population, is very much that it's based on what you were talking about there in terms of that motivation to increase challenges, increase skills, keep moving forward, and to experience flow. And I've definitely found that in the research that I've conducted. And we've just recently done a study where we've looked at about 200 participants in what we would call high risk activities, including climbing, including downhill mountain bike riding, free skiing, and skydiving, and very much debunked this idea that it's about seeking an adrenaline high, and very much supported the fact that they are interested in experiencing flow. And that echoes the research I've done with more mainstream athletes, and in terms of traditional sports, that flow is a big motivation for participation and for continuing participation, whatever the level of performance. So thanks for the opportunity to share that.
No, thank you, Susan. Where in Australia are you?
I'm in Queensland, Australia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have at least two people here from Australia,
Yes.
Stephen as well from Sydney.
Yes. I'm originally from Sydney, but I've been based in Queensland for many years now.
Okay, great. Thank you. And feel free to jump in again at any point if you like.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Anyone else? Other questions or comments?
Gary, can I add a little bit about that risk?
Sure, John, go ahead.
So one of the more risky things on the farm is livestock handling, especially large livestock. The cows that you saw in that picture, anywhere between 1,500 and 1,800 pounds. And one of the things that I really like about livestock is moving them, ironically, especially when they don't want to move somewhere that I want them to move. And there's an art to understanding how animal moves, specifically in this instance, a cow. And you can stand in different parts of their flight zone, whether that's behind their right front leg or left front leg, whether that's standing directly behind them, whether that's moving quickly or moving slowly. How that animal moves, how that cow moves is providing you that direct feedback. And there is definitely a difference between moving a calf or moving a 8-month-old heifer and moving a cow with a fresh calf. And then, of course, even more of a difference when you're trying to move a bull. And when you're trying to move a bull, obviously that can get into the rodeo aspects, a high-risk sport pretty quickly, which, of course, is something I don't want to be in. But there is that challenge. When I first started working with livestock, I would never, ever get in a pen with an animal I didn't trust. But as my experience level has gone up, I have become not only more comfortable, but kind of challenge myself to move them to places, just to see if I can. And so there's that constant challenging myself in that higher risk area that is, you know, it's not rock climbing exactly, but it's definitely a higher risk, but it's for certain, it's not an adrenaline rush. It's a challenging of myself to work with a live animal. Obviously what I do is a fairly solitary job. So it's kind of refreshing to work with a live animal that gives you that constant feedback about how you are or are not reaching your goal, your very clear, specific, singular goal.
Right.
John, I have a question for John. Do you think there are certain styles of farming that are more or less conducive to flow experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned when I first started, you know, this is a family farm. I feel a very deep connection to the land. It's a way of life and it's a business. And you do have producers that run 10,000 acres and all they do is drive around and make sure that their employees are doing what they told them to do. And they see farming strictly as making money. It's not particularly a way of life for them. And I don't know that they feel a very deep connection to the land. It's a commodity. The land itself is a commodity to them as well as the corn and the beans that they're raising are. So I do, you know, I do feel, again, fortunate that I do have that connection. Does that answer your question?
Still waiting on Mike to get back to us. So in the meantime, other questions? Anyone from the class or not from the class, it doesn't matter. Or do we have any comments or questions from Facebook?
There's one question on chat for Raud, just wondering if all his rock climbing is free climbing or not.
Okay, so thanks for the question. That I guess I'll start by differentiating or explaining what free climbing is. There is free climbing and there is free soloing. I'm sure you have, maybe a lot of you have seen the documentary Free Solo, where Alex Honnold climbs El Capitan in Yosemite without the use of any safety gear. Free soloing falls under the umbrella of free climbing. Free climbing is when you climb a rock using only the aid of your body. You are, yeah. And then under that umbrella, there's different activities such as bouldering, sport climbing, trad climbing. All those types of climbing that I just listed all involve safety gear. So free soloing is the only branch of free climbing that involves no safety gear. You're still only using the aid of your body to move up the wall, but if you fall, it's a likely death. I don't free solo. I only free climb. So I always have padding beneath me or a rope and a partner. I'm always using safety gear and trying to mitigate risk in when I fall, because I do fall. I fall a lot. So that's where I'll differentiate the two. And so to answer your question, yes, I always free climb. No, I have never free soloed.
There's another, excuse me, another question on chat for everybody, and maybe Raud, if you want to start, wondering if COVID has interrupted your ability of finding flow with these activities, and if so, how?
I I feel guilty saying this, but it's probably only enhanced my ability to go outside and rock climb. I'm not saying like my quality of life is better because of COVID, but the rock climbing gyms are closed. And for that reason, most of my work now involves me going outside, leading trips, organizing events. So I would say in that sense, it hasn't, decreased or enhanced my ability to experience flow, but I have been getting outside more. So I have been rock climbing more.
So Josie and John, you were both nodding as soon as he mentioned the unintended consequence, I guess, of COVID-19. Can you say
Yes,
something?
I have always lived pretty much like a recluse. So no change for me. I'm just in the studio all day. I will say that I've been busier professionally because, and this is like a really great, a happy thing that came out of the COVID is that there's a lot of people that are having so much more time at home that they want to learn how to make art. And so for a long time, they've been like, oh, I would love to do watercolor painting or whatever. And I follow Josie and she has a course and she has tutorials. And so I'm having a lot more people contact me for, for instruction and for supplies, and which is great. That has become a part of my calling, is to help people. Ultimately, I consider myself like a flow evangelist because it's been so satisfying for me. And most importantly, it was satisfying for me during the hardest time of my life. Like I relied on flow when I was in the most devastating grief I could experience. And so I think of all the people that are experiencing trauma now, which is like everyone, on various levels. And I think everybody should find their thing, which it could be the farming or gardening or rock climbing or walking. It's so simple to find it. And it's so restorative and amazing, so that's a big part of, I consider it like, if I can help a few people find their thing, and if it's painting, that's amazing. But it doesn't have to be painting. There's so many ways to do it. John?
I think that's a great example of describing how we can seek out new challenges, and I found that too in my experience, Josie, that with COVID, which we have not been too badly affected by here in Australia, at least where I'm living, but certainly it's affected life across the world. And I found that and I work as a psychologist, and I found that the people that have thrived in this time of unprecedented change in the world have been able to seek out a new challenge, or the one that, like, if you call yourself a recluse, you haven't had to rely on other people too much. Seek out a challenge that you have some control over and that you can develop a skill in, and then in that way, even though the circumstances aren't ideal, you can still find flow in what you're doing, in whatever you choose. So like for me, one of the challenges was putting a lot of the work that I do online. And so here we all are online from around the world, different people from around the world, different time zones. And so being able to connect that way, that has involved a skill set for someone that's not the greatest technologically. That's, a skill set that's had to be developed. And it's just provided a new opportunity that I otherwise wouldn't have developed. Because there wouldn't have been that need. And now it's opened up new opportunities, just like this one that Gary's put together as a small example of that.
Thank you, Sue. I'm going to mention something quickly here that was prompted when Josie was speaking. There's a researcher in the psychology department at the University of California, Riverside, named Kate Sweeney, who did a very large kind of on-the-fly study of the experience of people in China, and also some participants in the US, but most of them were in China, during the early part of the COVID crisis, and trying to measure the impact of a mindfulness practice versus the regular experience of flow, and which of those between the two of them help them better cope with and grow from, but at least cope with being in quarantine. And the effect sizes for the results on the impact of flow are just off the chart. You know, nothing against mindfulness by any means. Mindfulness can do great things for people, but just a ringing endorsement for the impact of regular experiences with flow producing activities when coping with quarantine. And I'm sure that'll be published in the next few months.
And then, John, did you want to speak to the COVID issue also?
Sure. Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, unless I had, unless I had read the news or gone somewhere, I would have no idea there was a pandemic going on. Life continued as normal, except that my wife and son were home a lot more, and our calendar cleared up, which was kind of nice. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a surreal experience for me to be. I'd be out doing chores and I would just sit for a little bit and watch the sun come up and watch the birds and whatever else. And I thought, if this pandemic wipes everybody out, things would be going on exactly as I am seeing them now. And so I kind of started to think a little bit about Mother Nature as being the ultimate flow master and how she can help and does help me get into that loss of self-consciousness state. So it really, while it didn't directly affect what I was doing, it did affect my mental capacity and the direction my thoughts took.
How about some other questions? We'll go for a few more minutes here. I'm going to give Mike and Isabel a call perhaps in a few minutes if they don't return soon.
I have a comment from Facebook to share, and then another question from chat, and then you may have some students with a question. Mm-hmm. We have a comment from Barry Hemmings from lovely Tasmania. So hello to you. He mentions that to echo the comments regarding risk and flow, I am a motorcyclist myself, and it is not the danger that I love. It is rather the challenge of managing the complexity of the roads as they are traversed. Interesting. Also, question on chat, which I think is of interest to all of us, wondering if someone finds flow in an activity where they have a high degree of expertise, such as you're all talking about. The question is, do any of you find flow in other things? So if you could each speak to that.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about this this question of finding flow in multiple things, and the term for that, which Gary brought up earlier, is autotelic, which is the type of personality that naturally orients to doing things for their own sake. And I have like this, I think I consider it like maybe slightly a liability, because I can find flow in anything, which means that I can be really scattered, so it's like I can go out into the garden and start weeding, and then suddenly 6 hours have gone by and it's like, I had a whole day planned, or I can like scrub out the tub and find flow. Recently I started getting into, I have no time for this, but I started getting into day trading, like stocks. Nobody here would have guessed that, but I love it and I find flow with it. It's risky though. So there's my question about risk. It's like, it's a little bit too scary, but yes, I find flow in everything and can find flow. And I actually have to be disciplined to not get into flow in everything.
I think cooking for sure both my wife and I do get into flow when we're doing a elaborate meal, not just your mac and cheese with tuna, but you've got your filet mignon on the grill along with some zucchini planks, and you've got a potato salad going, a hot potato salad, it's all these things going at the same time. And you're aiming for this perfection of having them all done at the same time and ready for guests, and ready to go at the same time. I think that's definitely, cooking is definitely a flow activity.
So prior to picking up rock climbing, I was a self-taught dancer from a pretty early age. I did take some lessons in college, and I was in a few performances here. But I was growing up largely self-taught before climbing. And the style of dancing I would do was also majority freestyle. And so so dance for me was largely a flow experience, with the challenge being trying to find that expression of myself to match the music at hand. So I think a lot of people, regardless of if they're dancing or not, can find themselves in flow experiences while they're listening to music or playing music, especially. So it was probably dance for me. But a couple summers ago, I just remember picking up some walnuts and trying to figure out how to juggle. And when I did, that was, I'm not a very good juggler, but that was absolutely a flow experience because my skill level was very low. But when I did figure it out, it was, I was so lost in it. Something I've never found flow in is probably reading a book. I just can't sit down for that long. So I think for me, it's easier for me to find flow in things in things that require more full body engagement.
Sorry, I would like to ask the panelists and anyone else who'd like to jump in for any thoughts that they have on the potential for using flow, directing flow for doing good, both at the individual level and at the group level and at the cultural level. How do you see flow as a phenomenon that can be learned, that can be taught, that can be learned, that can be practiced, that can contribute to individual well-being? And you've given some examples of that. These have been great examples. So we can move beyond that if you like to the more macro levels, but for potentially families, to give you some example and something to think about, families, business, education, the culture in general, the greater good. Does flow have a role there? And what could that be? That's your essay question, I guess.
I have Mihaly's book here because the other day I happened upon a couple of sentences that I think are really relevant to your question. He's talking about people who are able to get into flow, autotelic type people. And he says people without that flow capacity can all too easily become captives of the media. They are easily manipulated by demagogues, pacified by entertainers, and exploited by anyone who has something to sell. If we have become dependent on television, drugs, and facile calls to political or religious salvation, it is because we have so little to fall back on. so few internal rules to keep our mind from being taken over by those who claim to have the answers. Without the capacity to provide its own information, the mind drifts into randomness. It is within each person's power to decide whether its order will be restored from the outside in ways over which we have no control, or whether the order will be the result of an internal pattern that grows organically from our skills and knowledge. I read that. I mean, this is written in 1990, but it's like, oh my gosh, it's so relevant about, you know, people just kind of, you know, thinking about like the fake news and crazy Facebook clicks and all that stuff. And so I feel like helping people to find their flow is a way to help people to find their call in the world in a restorative and positive way. And sometimes it maybe even feels kind of selfish, like I'm just sitting around painting, or I mean, John's doing something really important with his flow. He's creating our food, but you know, me and Rod are just like out there having fun. But I think it is important what we're doing. So, you know, there's my answer.
And I'll mention that this was not a setup. Josie and I did not talk about this. I wasn't even planning on bringing this up, and she just happens to know her
No?
the book flow so well she could turn right
Can you
to
see me?
the page there. Oh, looks like we're back. Okay. I think we just need to unmute. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Hey,
Sorry
welcome
for
back, guys.
problems. Sorry for the problems. I wish I was in better health, but anyway, I'm trying to keep up with you guys, and I hope to be able to answer or to connect with you in some way, even though I know I'm not in the best of conditions to add anything to your momentary situation or lives. But I appreciate your presence, and what should we do now, Gary?
Well, we've been having some good conversations about a number of wide-ranging issues here, Mike, about rock climbing, about risk, about adrenaline, about all sorts of things. And right now we just started talking about the potential for using flow to do good, for the greater good, within institutions, say schools, within business, within families. And Josie, I just raised the issue, and Josie turned right away to a page within the book flow and read it right there, chapter and verse, just using your words perfectly to support what I was getting at. Did either of you, John or Rod or anybody else, want to add anything on that theme about flow, using flow beyond the self, the individual self?
I think on this event, hi Mike, Sue Jackson from Australia.
Mike, do you see who's speaking? I don't know if you recognize this. Mike?
Yeah.
You see who's speaking? Go ahead, Sue.
Hey Mike, it's Sue Jackson from Australia. It's so good to see you.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Nice. And very best wishes for your birthday and for your good health. And I think, you know, to just address that question of, you know, making contributions, how do we use flow for good? We have no better example than Mike and the amazing work that you have done, Mike, in helping to uncover and to give words to this amazing concept of and experience of flow, and then to put it to so much good with everything that you have done in your lifelong contributions to helping the world to understand flow and to see how to put flow into their lives. And so I think, you know, Mike is an optimal example of how you can use flow for good. And it does come down to each person, how they want to make use of the talents and opportunities they have. And Mike has written extensively, as Josie shared in his writings, about how flow can be used to help to develop complexity and growth in individuals and society. So just want to say thank you, Mike, for that amazing contribution.
Well, thank you guys for listening and reacting and getting involved in these issues, because I hope, you know, the more people care about how to have a better life, I think we should be having a better life eventually. And I think the things you mentioned are certainly very important, and they are part of it. And the problem is that often you are really not aware of what is happening and what you can do to make it better. But if you start practicing that and realize what you can really do, what is the thing that you can usually contribute. For some people, it's just smiling and listening. For some people, it's to actively getting involved. And I think everyone can be part of the process of making life better to everyone else. But there are different ways of doing it, and depending on what strengths you have and what chances you have, what opportunities you have to act, you may be doing one thing or the other, or nothing for a while until you are ready for it. But can you tell me something ask me some questions, or say something that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. If Mike is open to it, if any of you have, and I know we're going way past an hour here, so I understand that students in the class need to check out. We understand, but a lot of you are still with us. So let's go ahead for those who would like to chat further. Any questions for Mike? There've got to be a lot of them.
I actually had a question for you. First of all, happy birthday, and I hope it goes very well. But I personally struggle with making my flow a priority, and I didn't know if that's a normal thing, just because just with everyone's daily lives, I know all of our speakers obviously do other things than their flow, but like, how do you know that it needs to be a necessity with like in your life, and you have to make time for it, whether you know you have to put your kids or your work and schoolwork as well?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There has to be a balance there, but unless one knows your life, you know, what you have to do, what you can do, it's hard to give you a recipe or a roadmap. I think you consult. That's one of the hardest things to do, you know, to consider, do I have to first take care of myself because I don't feel so good, or my family, where there are ups and downs, or my community, my workplace, my neighborhood, or the country, or the humanity. I mean, there are so many levels in which you can contribute and make things better. And I think a good life is when you are able to relate to as many of these components as possible: your family, your friends, your work, your community, your environment, your neighborhood, your country. But certainly the priorities are with those close to you. They are the ones who require the first and most important inputs of your efforts. It's whoever is close to you, and whoever is related, and whoever is waiting for you, and whoever is your friend. But other than that, it's so different for different people. There is no one general response I can give, but I think that should help. I think if you have other questions about it, ask them, but
We have several questions on chat. Mike, here's one that you and I and Gary have talked about a lot. So if you would like to say a few words about this one, how could education systems encourage and teach flow throughout K through 12 and in higher ed?
yeah, well, education involves getting to know things that you don't know, or getting the root of the word education in ancient Latin meant to be led out. So to educate somebody is to leading them out. And you educate yourself, you're leading yourself out. That is, you're trying out new things, new ideas, new responsibilities, new tasks, new jobs. And that, of course, you have to decide which are the most important ones, you know, and that depends on what your family needs first, and then what your job or your students or job or whatever, people depend on you, and then it goes on until it means everyone else in the world, you know. But it's certainly, first you have to deal with those who are close to you and depend on you.
Mike, do you want to say something about schools, though? I think that was part of her. Maybe you didn't hear that first part of the question. The question was, what can schools do better? How can education better apply principles, the research that we know from flow?
Well, I think the first way is to make education itself more enjoyable. That is,
okay,
transmission of information that will get people excited, interested, committed to pursue whatever the topic is. So that's number one. But number two is to give people different options. You already brought up some options yourself. And there are certainly options everywhere, in the family, in the neighborhood, in the community, in your job, and then going out to the world, where you could figure out whether you can contribute something or ask questions or contribute information. So anyway, yeah, I think that's certainly.
Yeah, schools do generally a pretty horrible job at creating an enjoyable experience for people, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I must confess that in my experience, school was not often enjoyable. I tried to find the parts of it and ways to make it enjoyable. And eventually I liked learning, but often I didn't like learning to what the teacher wanted to teach. So anyway.
Yeah, you've talked some, Mike, about your early experience, as a child and as a teenager, going to school in Rome. The courses you had to take, the subjects you had to study were not always your cup of tea.
Yeah, right. Really, in my life, I think what was important was the example, the presence of my brothers who were older than I am and who who struggled to school and succeeded with it. That was very important, but then what became important is when I was 11, 12 years old, I joined the Boy Scouts, and there I learned self-control and determination, and I applied that to school. And then I chose from my curricula, I tried to choose things that I liked and immerse myself in those, which wasn't successful all the time, of course, but it was enough to keep me going. So let's see. Well, let me ask questions of you. There is no one in the lower, somehow.
I think they just don't have their cameras on in that bottom row.
Gary, we have a lot of really good questions in the chat, and I don't know
Okay.
how long.
All right, these are from Facebook.
Keep my yes, and we also let
have-
me here's
two.
a short one from Barry in Tasmania, wondering about team flow, and if a team shares the experience of flow, do you think that enhances their performance, makes them more capable, more competent at what they do?
Yeah. Well, it does if what suggestions have to do match the needs of the group of the. See, suppose you are 6 people on a 3 are present, 1 is you, and there are 2 people who are not there, or let's say there are 3 people who are not on the Zoom, and you miss them because they hopefully contribute something, and I think what you need to do is try to convey to them that their interests or their strengths are missing from the group, and that's why we, among other things, that's why we miss them, is because there is nobody who is good at, let's say, sports or art or something like that, and they would be good contribution to that. I don't know if that helps. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yep.
I lost you on the, I can't see you on the screen.
I cut the video here. There are so many good ones. Mike, here is another one that I think maybe you could address in the time we have. Just I'll kind of paraphrase, but someone mentions that almost 100 years ago we were talking about automating labor, and now, of course, we're able to automate a lot of labor, and that raises issues of, you know, how people can work themselves out of poverty and lots of things. But the question is essentially, if we could live our lives in flow as opposed to being focused solely on making a living, how do you think that would change the world, and how could we convince the world to shift to that perspective?
Well, yeah, at this point, of course, we have such a variety of specialties, tasks, individual strengths, and so forth. I don't think you could easily use any method to switch people to it. It would take a while, but certainly if we use the existing technology, we could begin to use that technology to develop kind of areas of interest where people who want and need certain strength or certain knowledge could go and could be present and participate, or use the technology to match the needs of people that way for information and knowledge. That's the major way, I think, but I don't have a real immediate solution. It depends what you're doing and depends what you need. And somehow I see about, let's see, 16 people.
Well, that's part of them, right? But then there's another screen too. So we have about 40, I think, with us right now. So, all right, do we have time for, why don't we just do one more question from somebody or a comment, and then we will have a little celebration.
Okay. Wait, should I try to open the other?
No, you don't need to do anything. Yeah, they just have their cameras off. That's all.
If anyone wants to jump in, please do. Otherwise, there are more questions on chat, and I'll just pick one.
I actually had a question, actually. First
Yeah,
off, happy birthday. Yeah, it's a pleasure to get to talk to you. I was wondering, how do you suggest that we find more activities that allow us to like get into the state of flow? Like, how do we find those activities that allow us to feel flow and like that we can really get into it with?
Well, that depends where you are and what you can do. I think one thing is many people use television, of course, to get ideas, opportunities, possibilities. You can think about people you know, friends that you know, that do things interesting that you would like to know more about, and you try to ask them, or think about joining some group that you think you may enjoy, either sports or more problem solving, or a civic engagement group in your neighborhood, in your community, and ask them if they need people that have some of your skills. And usually it's not too difficult to find them. People look for able and willing people. They are not so easy to find. So you are a good catch. Good luck.
But you raise a good point, Carter, because so many people, they graduate from high school and they go to college, and they graduate from college, and especially when they're graduating from high school, they don't have a clue of the kinds of careers, the kinds of opportunities, the kinds of things that they can do with their lives. I mean, they've got a short list, that they're exposed to all the time through the media and the, life around them. They don't know but an infinitesimal speck of the possibilities, and there are all kinds of careers out there. And there are all kinds of careers that haven't even been developed yet. And many of the people who have the most satisfying lives develop their own careers. They figure something out on their own. So it's too many people, I think, fall into the trap of thinking, well, they've got to plug into one of these prescribed, interest areas or careers or something like that. So the real challenge is, Mike's right, of course, finding those, and trusting your instincts and trusting your intuition and, exploring and connecting and see where it takes you. Not just assuming that you have your purpose all figured out, at a tender age.
I agree with that, but what you have to do is also to be proactive. You should think, as was suggested by Gary, what you would like to do, and then try to get in touch with people who are in the business of finding teachers or people to help with young people, and say, hey, I'm good at this, and there seem to be people interested in this. Do you know whether there is somebody who could use these skills or this knowledge? And probably you will find something, because as you're right, the world is full of unused talent and full of people who need talent and can't find it. And the matching the two is what we need to accomplish. And that, I hope this kind of a thing that Gary is facilitating will help that.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, because when you hear anybody talk that you can react to, remember that, write it down, and then go back to Gary or get in touch with the person who raised that issue. Because I think that there is enough knowledge in a group of 20 people like you to find answers to ask questions, to most questions. Not to all of them, but to a lot of them. Or at least the first step towards a solution.
Right. So tomorrow's a big day for you, Mike.
Tomorrow's
A milestone day.
Tomorrow's your birthday.
Oh yeah, he's conveniently forgotten. That's right. So it would be remiss of us not to take this opportunity when we're all together to wish you a happy birthday. Beyond the
Okay,
wishes,
don't be remiss.
beyond the wishes that have been extended so far. So shall we go with the most traditional means and sing a little song? I think we all know it.
Or can we get everyone on screen?
If you would unmute yourself, that'd be a good start. And don't worry about how you sound. There's going to be, because of all of us and the technology, so much cacophony that it doesn't matter how you sound, okay?
Yep, so how
See, I
about?
think we're still waiting for a few more to unmute. This will be a test of
Yeah, so
who's
videos
really with us.
on and everyone unmute yourselves.
We don't necessarily need to see you, although it'd be good. Oh, we're picking up a few here.
Yeah.
Oh,
If
all
you
right.
sing strong, loud enough, it will come on.
Yeah, okay.
So
All
Gary,
right,
you
all
have
right.
to lead us in the songs.
I don't know about that. I'll get you started. So in observation, or in, observing Mike's turning 86 here in a few hours. Are we ready? A little happy birthday. All right, ready?
Happy birthday.
Come on.
to
I'm a little sick. Come on.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday Hey,
All right.
Cha-cha.
Well, okay. Well, that's.
That lag will do it.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you. You know, it's hard to sing together when you are together. And when
We
you
are together
are-
across the world. It is so good to see you. And very, very best wishes to you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Susan.
Yeah,
Thank
Susan,
you so much.
this was great. This was a terrific surprise. We've never met, but it's until now. So thank you. I've admired your work for so long.
Thank you.
You know, since way back when you and Mike did Flow in Sports. So, which goes back
Yeah.
what, 20 years now?
It does
Maybe
go back
more?
a few years, doesn't it, Mike? And it was certainly a highlight for me. And Mike has been the most wonderful mentor to me. And as I said earlier, just made so much wonderful contribution to psychology and to the world for anyone that is open to understanding flow. And Gary, it's so good of you to put together this opportunity for people to say hello and to connect this way. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, guys.
Yep.
Happy birthday, Mike.
Okay. Happy. Oh,
Happy
Mike, I have
birthday.
I have a
Thank
number
you.
of birthday wishes that these students have written for you, and I'll get those collected and email them to you tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much for everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you
Bye.
all.
Best wishes to all of you.
Okay. So long, Mike. So long,
Thank
Isabella.
you.
So long. Bye, everybody.